Blessings to you. If this message spoke to you, tap like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell for more inspiration. There are seasons in life when you feel like the weight of the world is pressing on your shoulders. You've prayed, you've waited, you've cried out, but the heavens feel silent. You've asked God, how long, and wondered if he still remembers your name. The truth is, he does. He has not forgotten you. God sees the weariness in your heart. He knows the tears that no one else sees, and he whispers to you today, keep praying, keep waiting, keep trusting. Weary doesn't mean weak. Weary doesn't mean you're faithless. Weary simply means you've been carrying a load for too long. And sometimes the greatest act of faith is not in shouting with joy, but in whispering one more prayer when your soul feels tired. God honors those quiet moments when you choose to trust him, even when nothing around you changes. Weariness is not wasted in the hands of God. So often when we feel tired, drained, or even spiritually exhausted, we assume something is wrong with us. We think, if I were stronger, I wouldn't feel this way. If my faith were bigger, I wouldn't be so worn out. Maybe God is disappointed in me. But the truth is, weariness is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of endurance. It means you have been fighting, believing, and carrying something that matters deeply to you. If you weren't pursuing something important, you wouldn't feel the weight pressing against you. And when you place that weariness in the hands of God, it becomes the very soil he uses to grow a testimony far greater than anything you imagined. The Bible never denies the reality of becoming weary. In fact, Galatians 6-9 tells us, let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Notice what it says, if we do not give up. The presence of weariness does not mean you won't receive the promise. What determines the harvest is your persistence. God does not disqualify you because you're tired. He honors you when you choose to continue even in weakness. The very fact that you feel weary is proof that you have not quit, and that is what heaven celebrates, not the absence of weakness, but the endurance of faith in the midst of weakness. Do you know someone who needs this encouragement? Send this video their way and spread the light. Think about a seed. Before it becomes a plant, it must be buried in the soil, pressed down by dirt hidden in darkness and seemingly forgotten. But beneath the surface, something powerful is happening. The seed is breaking open, roots are growing, and life is being formed in secret. That is what weariness often feels like. You feel pressed down, hidden, and even forgotten. But God is not ignoring you. He is cultivating something inside you. The pressure you feel is producing roots that will sustain you when the harvest finally breaks through the surface. Even Jesus, in his humanity, experienced weariness. He was weary at the well in John 4. He grew weary under the weight of the cross, and he wept in the garden before his crucifixion. If the Son of God could grow weary, then your weariness is not weakness. It is evidence of your humanity. And just as God used Jesus' darkest hour to birth the greatest victory, he can use your weary seasons to produce strength and purpose you never knew you had. The enemy wants you to believe that your weariness is a sign that God has abandoned you. But the opposite is true. Weariness is the evidence that you are still in the fight. If the enemy could have stopped you, he would have already done it. The fact that you are still holding on, still whispering prayers, still clinging to faith, even while weary, is proof that God's grace is sustaining you. What feels like weakness to you looks like strength to heaven. And here's the most beautiful part: God never wastes weariness. Every tear you cry is collected. Every burden you carry is seen. Every silent prayer you utter is recorded. Nothing is overlooked. And in his perfect timing, he takes all of it and turns it into a testimony that will inspire others who are weary too. You see, your weariness today is the seed of someone else's encouragement tomorrow. The very struggle you are enduring is being shaped into a story that will remind someone else not to quit when they feel like giving up. So don't despise your weariness. Don't see it as the end of the road. Instead, place it in God's hands. Trust that he is using it to build deeper roots, stronger faith, and a greater harvest than you can imagine. One day you will look back on the season that felt the heaviest and realize it was the very ground God used to grow your greatest testimony. Your weariness is not wasted. It is working for your good and his glory. Silence does not mean absence. One of the most difficult things for any believer to endure is the silence of God. You pray, you plead, you pour out your heart, and the heavens remain still. The lack of a visible response can make you question everything, your faith, your prayers, even the love of God. But silence is not the same as abandonment. Just because you cannot hear God's voice in a moment does not mean he is not moving. Often, God's silence is the stage he uses to perform his greatest works. He is never inactive, never uninterested, never disengaged. He may be silent, but he is not absent. Think of Daniel. For 21 days he prayed and fasted, seeking an answer from God. It seemed as though heaven was closed, but then the angel appeared and explained that from the first day Daniel prayed, his words were heard. The delay was not denial. The answer was sent immediately, but resistance in the spiritual realm caused a pause. If Daniel had stopped praying because of silence, he would have missed the answer that was already on its way. This story reminds us that silence is often just a veil covering the unseen battles God is fighting on our behalf. Silence can also be a sign of trust. When a teacher is quiet during a test, it does not mean the teacher has abandoned the student. It means the student has already been equipped with everything they need to succeed. In the same way, God's silence can be his way of saying, I have already given you the promises, the word, and the strength you need to walk through this season. Trust me enough to keep going. The silence is not rejection. It is confidence in your ability to hold on. We live in a world where constant noise makes us uncomfortable with silence. When God is quiet, we assume something is wrong. Yet silence is often the space where faith matures. Faith that only survives when God speaks is shallow, but faith that continues even when he is silent is unshakable. Silence teaches us to depend not on our feelings, but on his promises. Feelings change, emotions fluctuate, but his word remains. And when you cling to his word in the silence, your faith grows deeper than ever before. Jesus himself experienced the silence of God. On the cross, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" In that moment, heaven was silent. Yet even in that silence, the greatest plan of salvation was unfolding. The absence Jesus felt was not real abandonment, but the fulfillment of God's greatest promise to humanity. If silence was part of Jesus' journey to victory, then silence may also be part of your journey to breakthrough. Sometimes silence is God's way of protecting you. If he answered too soon, you might settle for less than his best. If he revealed everything now, you might not be ready to carry it. Silence forces us to trust his timing, not ours. And in that trust, our character is refined. Waiting in silence may feel painful, but is preparing you to steward the blessing when it arrives. So, when you pray and hear nothing, do not assume God is absent. When you wait and see no change, do not assume God is ignoring you. He is closer than you think, working in ways you cannot see. Silence is not proof of distance. It is the quiet reminder that his presence is steady, his power is active, and his plan is unfolding. One day you will look back and realize that the silence that once broke your heart was the very space God used to shape your destiny. Waiting is preparation, not punishment. This truth is one of the hardest to embrace when you are living in the middle of a long delay. Our human nature desires speed, quick solutions, and instant breakthroughs. But God works differently. He is not concerned with convenience. He is concerned with transformation. When he asks you to wait, he is not trying to punish you. He is preparing you. The waiting room of God is where strength is built, character is shaped, and faith is purified. Think of Abraham. God promised him descendants as numerous as the stars, yet he and Sarah waited 25 years before Isaac was born. To human eyes, that wait might have looked cruel, but it was not punishment. It was preparation. During that season, Abraham learned to trust God in the face of impossibility. His faith was tested and refined, and by the time Isaac came, Abraham was not only the father of one child, but the father of nations in faith. The wait had strengthened him to handle the weight of the promise. Joseph is another example. He received a dream at a young age that one day he would rule, but instead of walking into a throne, he walked into betrayal, slavery, and prison. 13 years passed before he stood in Pharaoh's palace. To the outside world, those years might have looked wasted, but they were preparation. In the pit, Joseph learned humility. In Potiphar's house, he learned stewardship. In prison, he learned endurance and leadership. By the time he stepped into power, he had the maturity and wisdom to handle it. If God had placed him in leadership too soon, The weight of the promise might have crushed him. David also experienced the same principle. Anointed as king as a teenager, he did not take the throne immediately. Instead, he spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves, and learning to lead men who were broken and desperate. Those years were not punishment for David, but preparation. When he finally sat on the throne, he was not just a king by title, but a shepherd of people shaped by hardship and faith. Even Jesus spent 30 years in quiet preparation before 3 years of public ministry. If the Son of God himself submitted to a season of waiting, then how much more should we trust God's timing in our own lives? Waiting seasons are where heaven molds us for what lies ahead. The danger in waiting is believing that nothing is happening. Waiting can make you feel overlooked, forgotten, or punished. But the truth is, God often does his greatest work underground. Just like roots grow deep before a tree bears fruit, your waiting season is digging deep foundations within you. God uses that time to teach patience, strengthen faith, and prepare your heart to carry what he is about to release. The enemy will whisper in your waiting, God has forgotten you. This delay means it will never happen. You are wasting your life. But those are lies meant to break your endurance. Faith answers with confidence, God is not finished. This delay is my preparation. What he promised, he will fulfill. So if you find yourself waiting today, do not view it as punishment. You are in training for the promise. God is shaping you, refining you, and strengthening you to carry what he has prepared. And when the appointed time comes, you will see that the waiting was never wasted. It was the very thing that made you ready for the miracle. The wait may be long, but the harvest will always be worth it. Trust beyond understanding is one of the most challenging yet most powerful aspects of faith. It is easy to trust God when everything is clear, when doors open smoothly, when prayers are answered quickly, and when circumstances make sense. But true trust is revealed in the moments when life confuses us, when nothing adds up, when prayers seem unanswered, and when the road ahead looks dark. Trust is not proven in comfort. It is proven in chaos. And it is in those seasons of uncertainty that God invites us to lean on him rather than our own understanding. Proverbs 3:5-6 tells us clearly, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Notice the wording, do not lean on your own understanding. That means there will be times when our understanding is limited, when our perspective cannot comprehend what God is doing. Our human minds see only one chapter of the story, but God sees the entire book. We see the small puzzle piece in our hands, but God sees the completed picture. Trust means surrendering the need to understand everything and choosing to believe that God is still good, even when life feels anything but good. Think about Job. He lost everything, his children, his wealth, his health. Yet in the midst of his grief, he declared, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Job did not understand why he was suffering, but he chose to trust the character of God over the confusion of his circumstances. And in the end, God restored him and revealed his glory through Job's story. Job teaches us that trust is not about clarity. It is about confidence in who God is, even when his ways are hidden. The same is true with Mary and Martha when Lazarus died. They could not understand why Jesus delayed in coming. To them, his silence looked like neglect, and their brother's death felt like abandonment. Yet when Jesus finally arrived, he revealed that the delay had a purpose. The miracle of resurrection was greater than the miracle of healing. Their confusion was real, but God's plan was greater than their understanding. Sometimes God allows circumstances that break our logic so he can reveal a glory that exceeds our imagination. Trusting beyond understanding also means releasing control. We like to plan, to know, to predict, to manage. But faith calls us to let go of the steering wheel and allow God to guide the journey. Abraham had to leave his homeland without knowing the destination. Noah had to build an ark without ever seeing rain. Peter had to step out of the boat onto waters that made no sense. Each of these moments demanded trust beyond logic, and in each case, God proved faithful. In your own life, there will be seasons where nothing makes sense. The finances may not add up. The doctor's report may be discouraging. The relationship may seem irreparable, or the doors you were sure would open may slam shut. In those moments, the question is not whether you understand, but whether you trust. Understanding is about sight. Trust is about faith. And faith believes that God is working all things for good, even when you cannot see the evidence yet. The truth is, trust does not require answers. It requires surrender. And when you surrender your understanding, you gain His peace. The Bible says that the peace of God surpasses all understanding. That means you may not understand what is happening, but you can rest in the assurance that He is in control. One day, you will look back and see that every unanswered question was actually part of a bigger plan. Until then, choose trust over worry, faith over fear, and surrender over control. That is where real strength is found, trusting God beyond your understanding. Prayer is persistence, not performance. Many people believe that the value of prayer is measured by how eloquent the words are, how long they last, or how passionately they are spoken. But the truth is, prayer is not about impressing God with perfect language or exhausting yourself with endless words. Prayer is about persistence, a continual returning to God. No matter how weary you feel or how silent He seems, it is the steady, faithful act of bringing your heart before Him again and again with trust that He hears every whisper. Jesus Himself emphasized persistence in prayer. In Luke 18, He told the parable of the persistent widow who kept coming before the unjust judge, refusing to give up until she received justice. The point of the story was not to show that God is like an unjust judge, but to highlight that if even a corrupt man would eventually respond to persistence, how much more will a loving Father respond to His children who refuse to quit praying? The widow was not rewarded because of perfect speech or emotional display, but because she kept coming. That is the heart of prayer, faith that keeps knocking. Some of the most powerful prayers are not shouted in church or delivered with poetic words. They are the quiet prayers whispered through tears, the desperate cries from a hospital bed, the short but sincere plea in the middle of the night, God help me. Heaven does not measure the length of your prayer, but the persistence of your faith. Every time you choose to pray rather than despair, you are declaring that you trust God more than your circumstances. Persistence in prayer also builds endurance in the believer. Every time you return to God in prayer, even when you see no change, your roots go deeper. It's like a tree during a drought. It may not show outward growth, but its roots are digging deeper into the soil to find water. Your prayers are doing the same. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, you are being anchored deeper in God's presence, making you unshakable when storms come. The enemy knows this, which is why he attacks prayer with discouragement. He whispers, nothing is changing. Why keep praying? God isn't listening. You're wasting your time. But those are lies designed to stop you from pressing through to your breakthrough. The truth is every prayer is collected by God. Every tear is seen. Every cry is heard. None of it is wasted. If Daniel's prayer was heard from the first day, even though the answer was delayed, then yours is too. Silence is not evidence of failure. Persistence is evidence of faith. Even Jesus showed persistence in prayer. In the Garden of Gethsemane, He prayed 3 times with the same words, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. He repeated himself, not because he lacked faith, but because persistence is part of surrender. It is bringing the same burden to God until peace comes, until strength comes, until the will of God is embraced. So do not despise small prayers, repeated prayers, or weary prayers. What matters is that you keep praying, keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. The door will open, the answer will come, the breakthrough will arrive in God's perfect timing. Persistence in prayer is not about convincing God to act. It is about convincing your heart to keep trusting until His plan unfolds. And when it does, you will see that every prayer, every whisper, every plea was worth it, because persistence always leads to promise. God's timing is always worth the wait. One of the greatest struggles of faith is reconciling God's timing with our own expectations. We live in a world where speed and instant results are glorified, but God does not work according to our clocks. His perspective is eternal, His plan is perfect, and His timing is flawless. The waiting may feel endless, the delays may break your heart, but when the fulfillment finally arrives, you will see that the wait was not wasted. The timing of God carries wisdom beyond our understanding, and it protects us from stepping into something before we are ready. Think about Sarah. For years she lived with the pain of barrenness, carrying the shame of unfulfilled promises. But when Isaac was finally born, she laughed with joy because she realized that the timing of God was precise. Had Isaac been born earlier, he would not have aligned with the covenant God had planned. The delay was not denial, it was orchestration. God was aligning his plan with Abraham's faith, Sarah's womb, and the future of nations. What looked like waiting was actually divine synchronization. Joseph's story reminds us of the same principle. He waited 13 years between his dream and its fulfillment. If he had risen to power earlier, he would have been unprepared for the famine that required his leadership. God allowed him to endure betrayal, slavery, and prison so that at the right moment, he would not only interpret Pharaoh's dream, but also save nations. The pain of the process gave him the wisdom and resilience to handle the promise. The wait became the training ground for destiny. David's journey also testifies to God's perfect timing. Anointed as king while still a shepherd boy, he did not immediately sit on the throne. He spent years running from Saul, enduring rejection, and living as a fugitive. Yet those years of waiting taught him how to lead with humility, how to depend on God's strength, and how to shepherd people with compassion. When he finally wore the crown, he was not just a king by title. He was a king shaped by God's timing. Had David ascended earlier, he would not have been prepared to carry the weight of leadership. Even Jesus submitted to timing. For 30 years, he lived quietly, working as a carpenter, waiting for the moment when his ministry would begin. 3 decades of obscurity preceded 3 years of impact. Why? Because timing matters. Every miracle, every teaching, every step to the cross unfolded at the right moment. Galatians 4:4 says, "When the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, not too early, not too late, but in the fullness of time." When we wait, it can feel like wasted time, but in reality, God is weaving details together. He is protecting us from doors that would harm us if opened too soon. He is preparing our hearts to handle the blessing. He is aligning people, opportunities, and circumstances so that everything fits perfectly when the answer comes. What feels like delay is often divine coordination. The enemy uses waiting to plant doubt. He whispers, "God has forgotten you. The promise will never come. You've missed your chance." But the truth is, God cannot forget what he promised, and his plans cannot fail. If he said it, he will do it. The timing is not in your control, but the fulfillment is certain. Your role is not to dictate the when, but to trust the who. And when the moment finally arrives, you will see that every tear, every prayer, every season of waiting was worth it. The joy of the promise fulfilled will overshadow the pain of the delay. You will hold in your hands what you once only dreamed in your heart, and you will realize that God was not late for a single moment. His timing is always perfect, and his timing is always worth the wait. Did today's message strengthen you? Subscribe, hit like, and share it to feed someone else's soul.